Welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live. You can catch us each and every week on your favorite podcast channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, as well as LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. And starting here soon in April, we'll be on Island TV as well. And very soon we'll be moving into our brand new studio home at Florida International University, which is going to be a very pertinent topic here with my guest today, Mr. Lee Schrager. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, good morning, Sergio. Great to be on.
Lee is one of the nation's preeminent event planners and media relations experts and serves as a senior vice president for communications and corporate social responsibility at Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. He's widely known and recognized for his creation of the Food Network and cooking channel, South Beach and New York City wine and food festivals presented by Capital One. Central to his business philosophy, though, is the notion of giving back to the community. Both food festivals have raised over say $30 million and $13.5 million respectively. And we'll catch up to see if that's still true. I think we've maybe even passed that. And Lee studied at the Culinary Institute of America, as well as the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Florida International University, where I'm an alum from as well, very proud. He's also a regular contributor for Ocean Drive magazine. He serves on the Board of Trustees for the Pérez Art Museum, Miami, and Board of Directors for the Food Bank of New York City, as well as a judge for Forbes 30 Under 30 and Celebrated Living's annual Platinum List Awards. Welcome to the show, my friend. Quite an extensive resume there and career that I'm sure you're very proud about. One of the things that I love to get into is humble beginnings. You know, where did this all start? Were you always passionate about food?
I was always passionate about food because I grew up in a family. I'm from Long Island, New York. I spent my formative years in Massapequa, Long Island, which is kind of halfway between Manhattan and the Hamptons. And my mom was a good cook growing up, and I always tended to, be in the kitchen with her, watching her cook. And when my parents traveled in the summertime, we had a woman that they hired to watch us. She was an elderly Italian woman named Mrs. Catanzaro. We used to call her Mrs. C. And she would come, and she really is the one who really taught me about baking and pasta, making pastas. And I think she really was the one who, kind of not convinced me, but guided me towards going into a career or, a lifetime in the food and hospitality industry.
Where's your family from originally?
Originally, probably, Eastern European, like, when I did my 21andMe or 21, whatever it's called, when I did one of those
The
tests.
Ancestry.com.
Yeah, Ancestry.com, something like that. It came back 99% Eastern European. So probably, Ukraine, Poland, Russia, probably right in that area.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So one of the, you're at a point in your life right now. When you started the South Beach Food and Wine Festival, South Beach Wine and Food Festival, you had that idea. What spurred that idea? What was it that actually got you thinking about that?
About 22 years ago, very good friends of mine, Barbara and Stephen Reichland. Stephen wrote a lot of those early cookbooks, Barbecue Bible, Barbecue Planet, Barbecue Universe. He's, here, he lives in Coconut Grove. He and his wife are good friends. And about 20 something years ago, Stephen was invited to participate, or had been for years participating, at the Aspen Food and Wine Classic, which is really considered one of the, the finest wine and food events in the country, and it still is. And they invited me to go with them one of those times when they were going. And I went out there, and I kind of was in awe, and it just seemed like, paradise with all these great chefs and winemakers and, it's all this experiential activations. And I remember being on the plane going home, and that's long before we had cell phones and email. I remember kind of thinking, wow, how great it would be to do something like Aspen, surrounded by the beautiful mountains, but on the beautiful beaches of Miami Beach. And that was really the beginning of it. I took out a pen and paper, made some notes about what I thought it should be and what it would look like. And the next morning called a friend of mine who worked at the city of Miami Beach, Michael Aller, and told him my idea. And I went to see the mayor at that time, Neeson Kasdan, and that was really the very beginning of South Beach Wine and Foods Festival, getting the city to commit. And obviously, I was working already at that time for Southern Wine and Spirits, which was Southern Wine at the time, not Southern Glazers as we're known today. And I remember, talking to Wayne Chaplin, the CEO, and saying that we really needed to do something. And if we were going to do it, it should be on South Beach, someplace sexy and where everyone wanted to be. And that was really the beginning of the South Beach Wine and Food Festival.
And at the time, South Florida wasn't necessarily on the map when it comes to being recognized as a food destination, right? And so that's something that you were really looking to grow and expand on.
Well, it was very different. It was very different. 22 years ago, there was, Michelle Bernstein was just coming up, and Michael Schwartz was coming up, and Chef Allen, and Mark Militello, and Norman Van Aken. Those were really the early days of the great kind of, Norman, Mark, and Allen were what was known as the Mango Mafia, those three chefs. And Michelle and Michael were kind of the up and comers and the newbies. And, that's kind of what South Beach was. And or South Florida, and if you thought about dining on South Beach, you either went to Joe's at one end or the Forge at the other end of the beach.
That's right.
There were very few things in between the Forge and Joe's during those times. And, now, of course, it's much different. There's 100 great restaurants on South Beach and 100 throughout, the city of Miami, Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, Wynwood, Design District. Now it's now it's harder to figure out where to eat because there are so many good options today.
That's true. The other day I was just even in, out west in the Doral area, there's quite a lot of, fantastic restaurants, even in, Kendall,
Sure.
If you're familiar with South Florida, that you never thought would have some great restaurants coming out of there.
Yeah, there's great restaurants all over. I mean, every area of Miami, has done, great things. It's hard not to there's no excuse for not having a good meal in South Florida.
Right, exactly. So one of the most important aspects of these festivals is the fact that they are 100% for charity, and they support not only the Chaplin School but the food bank in New York. So tell me about the impact that has had on the community.
Well, the South Beach Wine and Foods Festival supports the Chaplin School at FIU. Our New York Festival supports God's Love We Deliver, and we have a new charity partner moving forward. And they are a hunger organization, not a hunger. They are basically feed nutritional meals to people in need in New York City, whether they're elderly or sick. They provide meals, 7 days a week. So something very important to people who are committed and passionate about food is making sure people are fed. There's no reason whatsoever that people should be going to bed hungry anywhere in this country or anywhere in this world. So, we're thrilled to have a great partner like God's Love. And obviously, it all started here at FIU, and we've raised probably about $35 million to date that benefits, special teaching opportunities. We've done renovations. We built a teaching restaurant school and student scholarships. We have a bunch of different scholarships. So, we touch the students, in all angles of that university, from their student lounges to their food banks on property, to their classrooms, to their externships. So we're really happy to be working so closely with a partner like FIU and offering that hands-on experience that you really can't get anywhere in the world.
Now, growing up, you didn't have that blessing, that experience that a lot of these younger students are having now because of the generosity of the festivals and so forth, and the impact that's having on them. What was it like for you starting off?
Well, remember when I was graduating high school, no one wanted to be a chef. You were lawyers, doctors, policemen, firemen, accountants, or whatever your father did.
Right.
In my case, a salesman. I didn't even know that there were opportunities like this. I didn't even know that there were schools like the Culinary Institute of America or Johnson and Wales or Cordon Bleu or, Escoffier, all over the country and throughout the world. And it was really a teacher of mine in high school. Her name was Linda Darnell, and she was my home ec teacher at Nova. I went to Nova High School in West Broward.
Right.
Yeah. And it was really my home ec teacher, Linda Darnell, who really told me, that I should, pursue a career in culinary arts. And, she talked to my parents and told them about the Culinary Institute. And that's really how it began. I applied to the Culinary Institute. I applied when I was 16. I graduated high school right before my 17th birthday. And I started the Culinary Institute a few months after my 17th birthday. I was probably one of the younger students at the time. Probably, I probably was the youngest student in school at that time, because the Culinary Institute was really a place where people went back for second careers. Most of my friends in school were 10 years older than me, and they had other careers, and all of a sudden, they really wanted to follow their dream and their passion, and were at the Culinary Institute. So I was kind of very young. I graduated, at 17, and I graduated from the CIA at 20. So I had I was out of school totally before, most people were really finding out what they were going to do.
But did you want to be a chef at that point?
No, I never wanted to be a chef. I wanted the background of being able to know what to do. So if I owned a restaurant or whatever, I would have ended up doing. I enjoyed cooking. I knew I didn't want to own a restaurant. I knew I didn't want to cook, but I wanted to be able to do it in case I ever was involved. And it, turned out to be very helpful, obviously.
What would you say today is more important? Creativity in terms of, if you're a chef, if you have a passion for it, because there's some incredibly creative dishes that are coming out and mixes and so forth, versus kind of traditional education in the culinary arts?
Well, I don't know. I
Or
think you don't have to go to school to be, a great chef. I guess I think you need the hands-on experience, and I'm not encouraging anyone not to go to school. But I think that I know lots of chefs who never went to college, and they just worked in great kitchens, and they worked themselves up through great kitchens. And, they're some of the top chefs in the country. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't go to school and get another degree or get a background in something else, or get a background in hospitality and or tourism or culinary arts. But there's nothing like that hands-on working experience, which is what I said about the festival a few minutes ago.
who are your mentors? Who did you look up to growing up, and who are still big influences in your life to help you lead your values and the way you approach your business?
Well, my parents were my parents were very encouraging of me, to send a 17-year-old kid off to, we lived in Florida at that time, and they sent me to Poughkeepsie, New York, where I'd never been before. And they, helped me, get into the school, and, they were able to, provide the resources for me to start school. And I think that obviously, to me, my parents were great mentors. They were hard workers. They worked hard. They had great values. They believed that you should love what you do and do what you love. And I think that's an important message. So certainly from early on stages, my parents were mentors. I would have to say that, Linda Darnell, who was my home ec teacher, was someone who mentored me, 45 years ago. And, I'm forever grateful to her. For kind of guiding me in that direction. And, throughout my career, I've had great people. I work for a great person now, Wayne Chaplin, the CEO of Southern Glazers. I mean, I've known Wayne for probably 35 years and have worked for him for 22. And I love his commitment and his passion to giving back to the communities that we do business in. I love his commitment to doing the right thing. And I think, Wayne's been an incredible influence on me for, the most important, years of my career.
The pandemic has spurred, I think, a lot of new chefs, right? Because whether it's recreational or not, everybody was at home and needed to start cooking. And if you didn't know how to cook, you probably had to learn how to cook pretty quick, or order takeout. How has that pandemic shifted or altered the industry and just the recognition of the industry?
Well, the pandemic altered the industry in so many ways. I mean, everyone had to flip and do business differently. If you wanted to stay afloat, or if you wanted to be able to come back, you had to flip. So whether it was doing takeout, whether they were doing pop-ups, whether they were selling at markets on the weekend. I think that restaurants who wanted to, stay in business all had to make a decision of how they were going to pay rent, pay their staff. And that was so important to people, being able to pay their staff, especially that first, 9-10 months of the pandemic, when nobody knew, no one thought it was going to go on so long, and no one knew what to do. So I think that we all learned a lot of lessons at the pandemic, and not just in the food world, but, I think in a lot of different careers, but mainly because restaurants were so, decimated by the pandemic, and the workers were so hurt. And I think that, those restaurants who flipped and started doing delivery services, started doing takeout, and started, doing weekend food markets, or, that were open, I think those are the ones who really came out of the pandemic best.
And that's a critical lesson, needing to pivot when change happens.
Sure.
And change is going to happen. It's inevitable. It's how we stop and react and pivot will determine who survives. And
exactly.
So
Precisely.
The festival this year had more of a focus on supporting local community, local restaurants and so forth. Tell me about that.
It was important for the festival. I mean, we came back not only in 22, but we did a festival in 21. It was the first time that we ever didn't do one in February. We moved it to May of 21. We felt it was important not to miss a year. We felt it was important to come back knowing that it would not be financially successful for the university or the festival overall, but we wanted to be back to show our support for the local chefs and for all the talent that came in, and to put a focus on what a great culinary community that we live in here in South Florida. This year we celebrated in a bigger way. I almost back to normal. I'd say 85-90% on our way to being back to normal. And a lot of our focus was on local and diversity. And it was important to focus on local chefs and to profile all the amazing chefs here and the diversity of all the talent here in Florida.
What do you see? Where do you see the food festival in 5-10 years from now?
Well, I would like to think that I see it still being a leader, still presenting great quality programming, still raising money for the university, most importantly, still offering that hands-on experience for the students, which is really the most valuable thing to me, that opportunity that we afford the students. So I hope that we're current. I guess if I had to say it in one word, I hope that we're still relevant or current in 5 years. And, there's no reason we shouldn't be.
Right. And part of your journey, you wrote a book, Fried and True, tell me about how you came about writing that one, and what was your inspiration for that?
Well, Fried and True came about. It was my second cookbook I did, and Fried and True really came about the very funny way. We were at the festival a year or two after I wrote my first book, and we were at a brunch that we do with Trisha Yearwood every year. We do a Southern brunch, and I was talking to Trisha, and actually Trisha and I share the same publisher, Clarkson Potter in New York City, a division of Random House. And Trisha and I were talking about the great fried chicken that was being served at one of the stations at her brunch. And then we got into this intense conversation about great fried chicken. And my publisher at the time, walked over, and she said, heard the conversation. She goes, you should really write a book on fried chicken. And that's really how the conversation happened. So I guess I owe it to Trisha Yearwood, for leading that conversation. So I'm very appreciative to her, and her event is still one of my favorite events and always features a great fried chicken.
That's interesting how ideas are spurred in the most random of moments, right? But putting yourself in situations where you could benefit from that. I think that's a really important lesson, especially when it comes to students, when it comes to younger people, is taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, trying new things, like you said, these hands-on experiences, not being afraid to take some risks and try out some new ways, because that's how the industry evolves and is revolutionized. You happen to be at that that right time and place to come up with that idea. What advice would you give to students that are in the field today, that are studying to be great chefs or managers or in the industry?
Well, I think it's important. You know, today a lot of people want to go into culinary arts because they want to be on the network. They want to be, you know, on the Food Network, or they want to be on Cooking Channel or Bravo. I think that you know, people going into the culinary arts should really do it because of their love of food and their love of the industry. It's not, you know, most people, you know, make a living at best in owning a restaurant. You know, everyone sees a busy restaurant, you know, that you go to a local restaurant and they're always busy, but there's not a lot of money to be made in a busy restaurant. I mean, obviously, bet you make more money in a busy restaurant than a slow restaurant,
Right.
for sure. But you know, the cost of operating today, the cost of food
Tremendous.
today, the cost of staff, the cost of insurance, everything is expensive. And you know, the consumers are the one bearing the brunt of that. You know, we're paying more money, but you know, it's costing more money. So just because you go into a busy restaurant in your neighborhood and you know they're busy doesn't mean that they're raking in cash. It just means that they're paying their bills at, you know, probably at best, and maybe putting a little money away. But you know, you don't go into the industry to be the next Bobby Flay or Rachel Ray. You go into it because you love it, you're committed to it. They're long hours, you work on the weekends, you don't get a lot of time off. And you know, I think if you're a hard worker and you love what you do and do what you love, I think then you'll be successful.
So one of the questions I always ask my guests is, was there a game-changing moment or event or, you know, series of events that happened to you that really sparked, you know, or turned on the light bulb or changed the trajectory of your life?
I would probably say it was joining Southern Wine and Spirits in the end of 1999. Actually, I started on January 4th of 2000. So I would say that it was a real game changer because I was used to working holidays and weekends and long hours and all of that. At, you know, I was with Intercontinental Hotels for 21 years, so I was really, you know, in the hotel business, and you know, I was used to working, you know, these crazy hours. And I remember the first few weeks I was here at Southern, I was thinking, God, what a horrible mistake I made. I didn't even know what to do with myself on weekends. You know, I was just used to, you know, I used to always work on the weekend, and all of a sudden I had days off.
Free time, right?
Yeah, free time, and you know, was compensated, you know, appropriately for it, you know, for the hard work. I would have to say that, you know, probably joining Southern and working for people who valued what I did and appreciated and gave me the support and the wherewithal to create these festivals and build, you know, events for the company nationwide was probably, you know, the best thing that happened to me in my career.
And how did you get that job? Was there a letter involved where you wrote a letter to the CEO?
There was. Right before my 40th birthday, which is about 22 years ago, I sent a handwritten letter to the CEO of the company, Wayne Chaplin. He was not CEO at the time; his dad was. But I had known Wayne, obviously being in the industry, and I knew his family. And I wrote Wayne a letter, and I said, "Hey, I've been with Intercontinental Hotels for over 20 years. I could probably be here another 20, but I want to do something different. And if you think I could be any value to the company, let's get together." And that's really how it started. And there was no email in those days. And, you know, I kind of wrote him the letter. It must have been in May. And in July, I heard from him. And he apologized that it had taken so long to get back. And I had forgotten about it already. And we had breakfast, and kind of it all went from there.
Letting people know what you want in life, I think, is very important, because obviously no one's responsible for our career. You were able to, let's say, reinvent your career at 40, which I think 40 is probably the new 30 or maybe 25 these days, but perhaps back then it wasn't. How important is it for you to, for people to be in charge and really, we're here for a short time. How important is it to be really in charge and take ownership of your career, your life, your decisions, your happiness?
Well, I think that, only you are responsible for your happiness. No one can make you happy. If you're not happy and you're not happy at work, I mean, you spend more time at work than you spend at home, with your partner or your husband or your wife. And I think that if you had a miserable day at work and you're miserable at work, more than likely you're going to go home at night and on the weekends and be miserable. I've never had that. I've been fortunate that I've always loved what I've done. Always. There was never a day when I didn't want to go in. I mean, there were days I'm like, ugh, I could use a day off, or days where
Sure.
I was kind of bored, just bored because it was maybe the same thing. But, it was up for me to always find myself. And it's why I do projects and why I created the festival, to keep it fresh. And, I like change, and I like doing things that are different, and I like learning. And I think that, only you are responsible for your own happiness and success. And no one gave me anything. I worked for what I had, but I was fortunate to work for people who appreciate it and recognize it. And I think that makes a big difference.
Lee, you are absolutely a game changer. Thank you so much for being on the show here. Founder of the Food Network and cooking channel South Beach Wine and Food Festival, as well as the New York Festival, that's impacting so many lives in both communities, not only in the community, but actually with the students themselves. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Congratulations on your success, and here's to another 20 years or more of these festivals.
Thanks so much, Sergio. Great to be on. Great to be in the category of a game changer.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.